Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, and we are really excited. I've been blessed with a lot of great football coaches over the last month in December and now into January. I had David Cole from Mercer, Jonathan Brillo from BC High, and again, another tremendous coach that we have on here today. Was the former head coach at Old Colony High School from 2012 to 2014. Is currently the Old Rochester head football coach. Finished with a record of 9-2 last year, his first year as head coach, so pretty impressive. And was the South Coast, if I'm getting it right, South Coast champions in 2019 too. So nice league title on the coach's belt as well. So ladies and gentlemen, we are really excited here today to have on our guest, Bryce Guilbeault from Old Rochester High School.
Hey, Anthony, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here and talk some football.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I put your name out there on social media, and there's a lot of fans of you. There's a lot of people that are retweeting, liking, write me personal messages of how great of a person you are. So I'm really honored to have you on here. We don't really know each other particularly well, but I feel like I know you between all the homework we've done, our conversation, and all the great feedback I've been getting. So it's really nice to have somebody on here that a lot of people just, have at such a high regard.
Oh, man, thanks for the kind words. I mean, maybe if after a loss, there wouldn't be so many retweets and likes, though.
Yeah, I know how that world works, man. I tell you. Typically, coaches that come on here, the first major question that I really ask them is kind of tell us your story a little bit. I know you got your start at Old Colony, but there's some cool story to that, and I want to give you a chance to really talk about that. So let our audience know, how did Bryce get into coaching?
So my father, he's been coaching high school for about 40 years now. And, as a little kid, ages 4 or 5, like every year, double sessions or triple sessions back in the 80s, my father basically loaded me up in the car at 6 a.m. and we'd go off to school. We'd be there for 12 hours, about 6 p.m. So when I was a little kid, I started off just playing with the other, boys or girls, other coaches, they bring their kids. And then, as I got older, started throwing the football around and I got really into it, I'd say probably about middle school, my father was a head football coach at New Bedford Voc Tech. And, I started watching game tape with him breaking down film. And he'd start I had a lot of patience. He'd explain things to me cover 2, cover 3. And, I'd help him out. He'd say, hey, can you read me the numbers on the line left to right? And I'd help him out. So at an early age, I kind of got that fix. Oh, this is cool. My father, he was an English teacher for 40 years. He's retired now. But his second job was coaching football, and to me, when you're a kid, you just think that's his gig. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I always knew at a young age that I really wanted to get into it. I played hockey and baseball as a kid. I didn't play Pop Warner football where I'm from. It really wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So my first taste was in high school. And, I played high school Bishop Stang. I went on after that, I did a prep school year at Bridgeton Academy in Maine. I played a year at junior college. I eventually ended up at Framingham State. And, after graduating from there, I played some hockey my first couple of years. And I finished playing football. I knew I wanted to get into coaching. It was just I was still living in Framingham. I was running a bar back then, and my father was still coaching football. And I think it was 2010, he got the head coaching job at Old Colony High School. And he said, hey, why don't you come down? He's like, I know you want to coach. So that was my first taste of getting into coaching. And, I went there for the first couple of years. I ran as the offensive coordinator, really opened my eyes. A lot of things I took for granted as a kid because I had that background with my father coaching. I figured everybody had that background, coaching, and kind of took it for granted and learned a lot about what it takes to be a successful coach and all the hard work that goes into it. And I finally, in 2012, my father decided it was getting too much for him. He's getting older. He wanted to coach, but he didn't want to be a head coach. So his job opened up, and I ended up putting in for it. I ended up getting the job, and I was there for 3 years. And then, I took a year off from football, and then I got the following season. I went to Old Rochester as an assistant coach under Justin Kogler. And, I did that for 3 years. I was I was a special teams coordinator. I coached the quarterbacks and the outside linebackers. And then he ended up leaving Old Rochester to take a job at West Bridgewater. And I was fortunate enough. I put him for the job, and I got the head coaching job.
Awesome. I know. And there's so much to dissect there because there's a lot of great information of every place that you've been a little bit and how you've grown as a coach. So the one cool thing that I really found when doing the homework with you and then obviously talking to you on the phone a little bit, and you mentioned is coaching with your dad and being around that. I mean, talk about seeing yourself as dad, seeing your dad as dad, and then seeing yourself as dad, this man of young men, this motivator of young men and getting them prepared week to week. I mean, you got to see your dad in two different lights. I mean, talk about how cool that is.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I mean, even as a young kid, like when I was like in middle school, I'd say, like I used to listen to my father give his pregame speeches, and I'd get fired. I hadn't even played football yet. I'd get fired up, and I always thought that was awesome. And then actually being on the staff and see, he's always been like had the gift of gab. He'll talk your ear off, but he's a good motivator. Like he always motivated me as a kid playing athletics and just watching him firsthand, and that was pretty awesome. And then when the roles reversed, and I took over as a head coach, and he was underneath me at Old Colony. Um, you know, I tip my cap to him because I'm sure there were times there were things that I was doing or a play call that I was calling that when he was a head coach, he'd be like, no, not now's not the time. But he went with it, and he took a step back, and he let me do my thing, and he always offered advice and counseling. And I mean, I'm really fortunate to be around him. He's a great guy. Everybody I know loves him. He was a great teacher, a great football coach, great father. And when I got the job at Old Rochester, he had been out of coaching for a couple years, and he's retired. My mother was like, please, like for the love of God, get him out of the house. And he all we did is talk football. He talked to me all the time. Hey, what are you guys doing? Well, they're running a 4-3. What do you think about that? I'll be like, all right, Dad, like relax, But then we brought him on last year. He ran the freshman program. He did a great job because, he's got a lot of patience, and he loves coaching like the fundamentals and the little nuances of the game. So he did a great job with our freshman program. And, we had a lot of those kids that we'll be counting on this year and years to come.
Yeah, it's so funny, because I think looking at that, right, like coaching your freshman level, like you need a coach who's patient. You need a coach who understands the game. You need a coach who's going to teach the fundamentals because that's the core value of your program as they rise through and go through. So what better man to trust than, your pops? And I mean, and looking at this, I just have the stats here. I mean, he coached over 20 years of Bishop Stang, 9 years of Greater New Bedford, 7 years at Old Colony, and now a year with you. So he's been around football for quite a long time and has a lot to add. So it must be nice to have your dad on staff with you too, during this time of being a head coach. So let's stick with Old Colony for a second. So I know after a few years of working with your dad, you took over the program for him. You were a pretty young guy when you took over the program. Maybe talk to young coaches a little bit about what it's like to go through the process of interviewing at a young age to take over a football program. In this case, a pretty small football program. Maybe talk a little bit about the interview process that you went through there.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely it was my first time going through the process. Um, you know, I was nervous, and what I found in that interview, you're sitting there. I think the superintendent was there, the principal, and the athletic director. And besides the athletic director, who has a background in obviously football and other sports, they're not really concerned about X's and O's too much. It's more about how you're going to lead this program, how are you going to build a culture, how are you going to treat the kids, how are you going to respond to an upset parent or anything. And I was looking back, and I was probably a little unprepared because in my head it was like, okay, X's and O's, this is what I'm going to do. But then they started asking like big picture questions, and going through the process, and it was good. I think there were 4 or 5 candidates, and went down to finals, and then I ended up getting the job, which I thought I had an inside track being there, but I think I was only 30 years old when I got the job, so I was still pretty young, as far as coaching goes. And we hadn't had a lot of success either. At that point, I think we'd only won a couple games, so they took a chance on me. They definitely could have been like, well, we're going to get somebody with a little more experience who has had success, but I think I did a good job selling myself and my vision. And, I got lucky. I got fortunate. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And, I definitely wouldn't be where I am now without that opportunity at Old Colony.
Yeah. And I think, when you take over a program at any age, it doesn't matter. There's such a shell shock, right? And, of wow, I have to not just be a coordinator, but I got to do all that stuff that you mentioned and all those types of questions that you're being asked. And it becomes a way harder job than you ever realized. You're like, wow, this is you have to do everything. So I know the first couple years, numbers were, okay. And record wise, you were starting to build that culture, but year 3, Old Colony had a 6-5 record, which talking to you, they hadn't really had a lot of winning success for a while. So year 3, you're building your program, your 3-year plan, your culture, and you're starting to see that change. I mean, talk about year 3 at Old Colony. What started to change in the program?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us is that, they had never had a weightlifting program in before. So we had started that. I think my first year as an assistant, we had started it, and it was a slow trickle, though. We had our numbers weren't huge. We might have had, you know, 35 kids in the whole program. So, that first year we may have had like 6 or 7 kids weightlifting. Then maybe it went up to 10. And by the time that I took over, and we had, when I was my third year there, my last year there, that senior group, they came through the system and they had kind of bought in. They were a talented class. As sophomores, a handful, 5 or 6 of those guys who started right away as sophomores. And those guys really set the tone for, hey, you got to be in the weight room. And, I had to lean on them, but they held themselves accountable. If one guy wasn't there, he was texting, hey, where are you? What's going on? And I think at the end of the day, with any program, the kids got to hold themselves accountable. The coaches are going to be there and they'll push you. But if the guys in the locker room aren't saying, hey, where are you? I was there. You weren't there. You're not going to get the results you want. And that senior, that last year, those seniors, they were really dedicated. And, we won 6-5. I think that was the first winning record they had in 16 years. And we probably would have gone 8-3 during one of those. We just missed the playoffs. I think we were 4-3, and then the non-qualifiers. And we won our first game. Then our starting quarterback went down the second play of the game, broke his ankle. So then we won a little tailspin. We won 5. We lost 2 in a row, and then we won a Thanksgiving game against Tri-County to go 6-5. So that was a nice cap to end the season.
Yeah, and it's tough when when your numbers are small to begin with, but especially the quarterback position. I mean, you see that at all levels. When quarterbacks go down, they are hard to replace at any level. It doesn't matter where it is. So I know after 3 years of working at Old Colony or coaching at Old Colony, you kind of stepped away from coaching for a little bit. And when I did my homework on you, I noticed that you jumped into the world of hockey, which I know has been a passion of yours growing up. So I'm curious. I'm a hockey guy myself. I played hockey. I never coached it, but I grew up playing hockey my entire life. I was a football guy as well. Talk about the change of, here you are working in a football program and then running a football program. Now you kind of jump on board as an assistant at Old Rochester High School hockey program. Talk a little bit about being an assistant coach under another head coach in a different sport, and maybe how that helped you grow or develop as a coach before you jump back into football a little bit.
Yeah, so I actually started coaching hockey there in 2012. So my first year as the head coach at Old Colony, I actually was an assistant on the Old Rochester hockey team.
Oh, okay.
So it was great. I mean, the guy who was a head coach here, this guy, Eric Labonte, who he actually coached me in high school. Great guy, great hockey mind. And, hockey's a lot different than football. Football, you have these 2.5, 3 hour practice. Hockey, you're talking about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes ice time. So you got a lot to work in between offensive zone, defensive zone, neutral zone, power play, penalty kill, and Eric, I learned a lot. Eric's a film rat, him and I had a lot of fun time breaking down game tapes and going to scout, and he sees the game completely different than how I saw the game. But he's been doing it for now probably 30 something years. You know what I mean? So I learned a lot, and I learned a lot from him. Like if we were working power play, he might spend 15 minutes just on the draw, making sure guys are tying up the guy, making sure and the little nuances. Hey, if we don't have possession, we don't have anything. So he put a lot of points of emphasis on little small things. And, it's like anything else, a lot of times greatness isn't just the big things. It's a bunch of little things stacked up. And if you win the draw on the face-off, if you have possession, now you have an opportunity. You lose the draw on the ice, the puck, you start from scratch, So I think a lot of things, it's a completely different game, but you can take a lot what you learn from hockey and you can apply it to football. There's a lot of drills that we ran in hockey. And I'm like, hey, I can turn this into a football drill with my D-backs and do, you change it. You take what you like and you push away what you don't like. But I learned a lot about coaching from him and just, how to handle, how he handled different personalities and, how some kids he was really tough on. Some kids he gave them tough. He just, built them up. They had a tough shift. Like, hey, it's okay, Mike, get him next shift. Where, still being a young coach in my early 30s, I grew up, in when I played in high school, my coaches were really hard on me. My father was tough on me. So I always enjoyed tough love. I was okay playing for tough coaches, but some kids are different. Some kids need to be patted on the back, say, hey, you're doing a great job and we'll get them next time. So I learned a lot from him as far as that goes, because he showed me how to manage different personalities and, he would give me responsibilities like the penalty kill and things like that. And, And then sometimes he'd always take your point. If you're like, hey, this is what I think you should do, well, you better be able to explain it too. Don't just say, hey, I think we should run, an umbrella on the power play. You'd be like, well, why the hell are we going to do that? You know what I mean? Like, so it was good because I learned a lot from him, but I learned things that I still use with my assistant coaches. They'll make a suggestion, and I'm like, well, why? Don't just suggest things. Like, give me a reason why. You know what I mean? So like, I learned a lot from him, and he had a lot of success here. I think we won like 6 straight SEC championships. Our second last year, we went to the Garden. We lost in the state finals to Shrewsbury 4-2, and that was a great experience the kids playing at the Garden, me being on the bench, and it's definitely something that like, you have that, and then I go and coach football, and you have that like a little bit of a street cred, like, hey, Coach Guilbeault, he coached at the Garden, you know what I mean? So I think it definitely helps the kids know that you kind of know what you're talking about and that you're not just blowing smoke.
Yeah, and it's great. I've always found it great to listen. I mean, this show, right? Listening to coaches of all different sports, football, basketball, lacrosse, whatever it is, to hear how they deal with their programs. And the football world's different. I mean, I've said this on a few episodes, but you have a week to recover, you have a week to game plan, you have a week to think about things. In the world of hockey, I mean, you might be going back-to-back nights, or if not every other night. So learning the mentality of a coach, how to quickly flips his team around, maybe after a tough loss or after a big win, and keeping them focused. I think those are the small little things that help you as a football coach to be like, hey, this is what the mentality's got to be, and we got to make sure they're sharp. So it's awesome. I think cross-sporting and really listening to how other coaches do things can always influence us. This shows the number one example of it. I've learned so much. I have a notebook of notes that I keep that I'm amazed by what some coaches do. So it's great. You learn so much from other people, and especially coaching another sport. So you mentioned that street cred, right, at Old Rochester, and being able to know the kids and they know who you are, and you coach the Garden. So the kids respect you. They know that you're a pretty good coach and you're involved in a pretty good program. How'd you get back into football? Because you jumped into coaching again at Old Rochester, where you were, I think, the special teams coordinator, defensive back coach, if I'm right, and QB coach, right? Is that what you were?
Yeah,
Okay.
outside linebackers and quarterbacks. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, talk about how you got your start back into coaching football at Old Rochester High School.
Yeah, so Justin Kogler, who was the head coach at the time, him and I've known him for a long time. I played against him in high school. When I was at Old Colony, he was at Bishop Colony. We played against each other. So we've always been good friends, knew each other really well. And he knew I took the year off, and I had a couple of opportunities to coach, and I didn't do it. I kind of just took the fall off and figured I'd wait to see what would open up. And he reached out to me, said he had an opening on his staff. And right as soon as he talked to me, like I knew, I had already talked to a couple other schools, but I knew like this is a perfect fit for me. I already coach hockey there. I know the athletic director. I know the community. I know the school. I know what type of kids and how important like athletics are over at Old Rochester. So as soon as he had to come, I'm like, I'm in, man. Whatever you need, I'll do it. And it was a great opportunity, a great group of kids. I mean, when I was there as the assistant, Justin won 9-2, 9-2, and 11-1. We won 2 SEC championships. We lost in the Super Bowl. We did a lot of winning, and nothing against Old Colony. We did a great job when we were there, and we had some success near the end. But winning, I wasn't used to winning, going 9-2, 9-2, 11-1. So like every win we had, it was like Christmas morning for me. Like I was excited. It didn't matter if we won 7-6 or 42-0. Like it was Christmas Day, and I was so pumped and excited. And some of the kids would even be like, "Man, the coach, like, calm down. Like we always beat these guys." I'm like, "Listen, they don't hand out W's on Friday nights, man. We'll take them whenever we can get them."
So talk about the interview process there. So you were an assistant coach, and eventually you interview for the head coaching job. And actually, before I even ask you that, let's talk about your experience at Gillette Stadium. There's not too many coaches I've met that play at the Garden as a coach, and then coach at the Garden, and then being able to coach at Gillette Stadium. And you did it both as an assistant coach, which I think is really cool. So I got to be there in 2008 as an assistant coach, as a D coordinator, and we won our game, and it was a cool experience. I felt like the one thing I really learned there was, plays are going on. You're like, what's happening? Where's the one? What's happening to the 1 technique? What's happening to the 3 technique? And you forget that you have a replay board. Oh, wow, that's a podcast first. Hey,
there it is, man.
But I remember there being like, oh man, just look up at the big screen that they replay every single time. And it probably took me a quarter to kind of figure that out before I was like, wow, this is great. I mean, talk about your experience playing there a little bit.
I mean, it was awesome, man. It was such a great experience for the kids. I mean, you warm up, you're in the bubble. Then you walk over from the bubble to the stadium. There's a couple of Patriot players just kind of greeting us as we walk through. Hey, good luck, coach. Good luck. Play high five the kids. And then we were fortunate. We played, I think it was like the 5 o'clock or 5:30 game. So as we were in the tunnel waiting to come out, like right as that happened, the lights went on in Gillette Stadium, and like, I don't know how many people were there, maybe 8, 10,000 people, but it was awesome. It seemed like it might have been 60,000 for all we knew. It was exciting, and the lights went on, and just to be on the field. And I'm sure the kids were a little nervous, but I think once the game got going, it just seemed like another game. You know what I mean? Like, you're making your calls, you're getting your special teams ready, you're talking to your quarterbacks, your outside backers, and I mean, it was a great experience. We played Stoneham, who's a very good football team. They won. We didn't have the best game. We had, I think, 6 turnovers. 2 were on special teams, so two were on me, which was hard to swallow. But all in all, it was a great experience. It's something that those kids will never forget. Not a lot of kids get to say, "Hey, I played at Gillette Stadium, where the Patriots play," and that's like a dream coming true when you're growing up. That's what you want to. That's what you want to be. So it was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and I think in Stoneham that year, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Stoneham was, kind of a train around our area. I coached in D6 level, and they were really running teams over. So to watch that game, I remember watching that game and how tight of a game it was. I mean, it was a great game back and forth. And you guys were really the first team that I kind of really seen them, give them a tough physical game. And you mentioned there was a lot of things that maybe you guys wish you could have had back a little bit, but it was a great game, and I thought you guys played pretty well. So, you're at the Super Bowl, and then, the coach steps down, right? And now you're going for your second head, coaching job in the football world. Talk about maybe how prepared you were for an interview this time around, maybe versus the first time around when you did it at Old Colony in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely well more prepared. I had interviewed for a handful of head coaching jobs before the old Rochester job, through the years. And, I'd gotten close a couple of times. And I thought how the process goes. You kind of think sometimes you have a good interview and you feel really good. You don't get a call. Sometimes you're like, that didn't go well. And then you get a call, hey, you're a finalist for the job. And you're like, oh, how'd I get here, But, for the old Rochester job, I was very prepared, obviously knowing the kids too, the personnel. Having that experience and been through the process a bunch, I felt really comfortable and relaxed. Sat down in front of the athletic director, the principal, a couple of a coach and a parent, and I was just really prepared for. I feel like everything they had asked, all the questions, like I was prepared for those type of things, and fortunately and gratefully they gave me the opportunity, and I'm happy to be there, and I don't plan on going anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, and it shows. I mean, your first year went 9-2, but let me ask you this: you take over the program that first year. I mean, you're taking over a successful program that's right fresh off of a Super Bowl appearance. Talk about the pressure maybe you felt a little bit. I mean, I got to imagine, again, you had that experience of being a coordinator and then kind of jump into the big job, right? And now here you are again doing the same thing. This time as a special teams coordinator, making that jump to head coach. I mean, talk about maybe the pressure or the nerves that you had a little bit taking over such a successful program.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird because it's not an ideal situation, right? Everybody wants to come into a job where they have one win, and then it's only going up from there. Obviously, Justin was a great coach. He did a lot to build that culture over there. But the nice thing was that we lost 22 seniors that year. We went to the Super Bowl. So I think, although myself and I think the other coaches on the staff knew that we had some really good players that any other year may have started, but because they had seniors in front of them, they didn't start. We knew we had some good players, but I think the perception around locally and maybe around the league is that we were going to have a down year. So I think that, for me, that was a calming effect because I didn't feel pressure like, hey, you have to go back to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It wasn't – obviously that's what I wanted, but I didn't feel that pressure. I just felt like, hey, like nobody's expecting much out of you. Like we do have some good pieces. We can use it as an advantage. We can catch some people. And, I got the job on a Friday, and I think, 2 days later we were meeting as a coaching staff. So, we really hit the ground running, and it was nice because I didn't really miss a beat. Justin left, and we still had the weight room going for a little bit. I think there was like a 2-week dead period maybe, and then we opened the weight room back up. So we were fortunate in that regard that we kind of had everything already in place, and knowing the kids and knowing the staff. I mean, we basically had the whole staff back, and I think I added 2 guys, one being my father and one being a younger coach. So, it was just kind of bringing my father and the other coach, Zach LeBlanc, up to speed of what we were doing offensively and defensively. And then, the kids, they knew that the bar had already been set. Like, this is the expectation that every year we want to try to win our league, and then we want to make a run in the playoffs, and we expect to try to be in the South Finals. And, we had a good senior group this year, and, we made it to the South Finals. We played Ashland High School, a very, very well coached team by Andrew McKay. And, they beat us by a point, and they went on to win a Super Bowl. So, we had a good year. Looking back on it, it was a great year. But, as a coach, it's those losses that get you and you reflect back. I almost reflect back every day thinking about, I could have done this, I could have done that. And, quarantine certainly didn't help, being home for about 8 weeks. And, at first you start breaking down game tapes for next year. And then you start going back and watching last year's tapes. And I'm like, man, why didn't I run 16 veer here?
Oh
Like,
yeah, you question yourself why.
yeah, you beat yourself up all day. But it was a good year, and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, and again, let's not underplay the program in general. I mean, I just want to talk about the program. You mentioned you lost 22 seniors, right? So before you had taken over as head coach, you guys were 34-6 over, like, I did the math, probably like a 4-year span, I would say, or 3.5, 4-year span over your last 40. That's pretty impressive. And then you come in year one, and like you said, you didn't skip a beat between the weight room and get out there. You guys finished 9-2. You lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions. I mean, they always say you want to lose to the team that wins it all, because at least that's the team that wins it. And obviously, 2019, again, you guys won your conference. So, you did a great job of really taking over that program and keeping it going and the winning tradition alive. You mentioned coaching staff. Now you've had 2 opportunities as a head coach to kind of hire your own coaching staff to be around these kids. I mean, what's your expectation of your coaches? What are you looking for in coaches? What do you want on your coaching staff? And what are those expectations you have for them?
For me, first thing I want in a coach is I want somebody who wants to be a head coach. I know that when I first started, and it was my father, fortunately, being the head coach, but like I knew right away, like someday I want to be a head coach. So like I did everything, whether it was filling water bottles, carrying the water jug to the bus, filling balls with air, like every little detail, because I knew that especially on game day, like my father didn't want to have to deal with that stuff. And then when I became the head coach, I kind of had some younger guys that I said, hey, this is what I expect of you, and this is what you need to do. And then going forward, when I was an assistant again with Justin, like I made sure that all those little things Justin never had to worry about, because I know what it's like when you're the head coach and it's before a game and you got a kid, hey coach, I can't find my earpieces, or hey, I need a mouthpiece. Like that's the last thing you want to deal with, So, for me, I want guys who want to be head coach. And I'm fortunate. I got some older guys. I got a guy, Craig Sherman. He's a Hall of Fame coach. He was the head coach in Old Rochester in the early 90s through the 2000s. He won a Super Bowl there. My father, who's been a head coach a couple places, I got a guy, John DeRoja. He's been coaching 30-something years. So I got a lot of older veterans who have seen a lot of the football. And then I get a good mix of young guys who are hungry to learn, and they're willing to stay late after practice and talk on the whiteboard, over the whiteboard, or to break down film, or to do the little things like, hey, make sure the freshman locker room is cleaned up because the janitors are sick picking up cleats. You know what I mean? So I think for me, I just want guys who are all in. If you can't be a very good coach showing up at 2:30 and leaving at 5:30 every day. You might not be able to get there early because of your job, but you should be able to stick around for a little bit to talk football or talk practice or go over game plan, and ask questions too. Like for me, I'm always asking questions. I don't care if I'm, I had a guy last year who just got the head coaching job at Upper Cape, Dane Johnson. And sometimes after our practice, they'd have Pop Warner practice. I'd sit and watch, and I'd be like, hey, Dane, like, walk me through that drill you guys went through. Like I think you're never too old, or you never know too much where you can't learn. So like I always want my guys to ask questions, or if they have, like we talked about earlier, if you have a suggestion, that's great, but why? Don't just say like, I think we should run ISO. Well, why should we run ISO? Like, you know what I mean? So like, and I think a lot of things, professional development, going to these coaches clinics and not just showing up, and you should have fun while you're there, but taking notes and trying to learn things. And maybe you're sitting in on something that we don't do. We're an I team, we run option, but maybe you go and see a pistol set or a spread set because you're trying to learn about a way to defend it. There's a lot of different things you can do, or resources. I mean, yourself, me, every coach has a network of coaches that you ask questions. You're always looking to learn, and I think if you're a young assistant, especially, like those are the little things you need to do. You need to network. You need to get to know people. You need to really understand, and whatever it is, whether you think it's a nothing job, whether it's special teams, or if you get a responsibility, like take it like it's the most important job on the field. When I was running special teams for Justin, like they got to a point where he was just like, all right, man, like you don't need to show me every clip on special teams. Like I trust you, do whatever you do. And that was like the best thing, because then after that point, I was like, okay, he gave me free reign. I can do whatever I want, but I wanted to show him like I wasn't taking it lightly. Like this is important to me. It's 1/3 of the game, and I was about it, And I think if you're an assistant coach for me or for anybody, like, and you get a duty, like that's your duty, like own it. Like try to be the best at whatever it is, kickoff team, kick return, and just go all in on it and get the kids excited about it. Because a lot of kids let's be honest, if you're a senior and you really only play special teams, some kids are like, it's only special teams. Well, that can cost you or win you a game. Like you got to get those kids fired up. Like, hey, you're only on the field 9 times today. You better make them count. So that's
Yeah,
the
and
biggest. Go
what
ahead.
I loved is what I read about you and talking and is listening to you talking about it passionately is special teams. I mean, I remember being assistant coach, defensive coordinator, and I used to tell Serge Guilbeault when I worked out in the Catholic, I want kickoff, I want punt, and I want extra point because all three of those can be such a momentum changer
Yeah.
against you. And I want to be responsible for it. I know I'm going to work hard. I know I'm going to have guys ready to go. And that's also a defensive mentality. So I want to, I want to be the guy who does it because I'm the defensive coordinator, right? So like you said, it can change games. I mean, we've punted teams inside the 5-yard line so many times and play the field position games. We've, knocked guys down and made the ball come out and we get a turnover on kickoff. So it can change a game very quickly in your favor, but it can also happen the other way against you. How much time do you dedicate? I mean, now as a head coach, how much time do you dedicate to your special teams, maybe per day, per week? I mean, how much time are you putting into special teams at practice?
Besides Monday, which is kind of, we have JV games, I'd say Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, at least 25, 30 minutes every day. Um,
Awesome.
I love special teams. When I was at Old Colony, I ran the special teams even when I was a head coach. Special teams to the normal person, they don't notice them unless something bad happens or something good happens. You know what I mean? So, I think it's a really especially the high school level. I think a lot of people take it for granted, and they try to hide guys on special teams, which that can be a dangerous game, man. Like it can cost you a game, and I've seen it happen to myself in the past. And so we spend a lot of time doing special teams. To me, punt is the most important special team. If you're punting the ball, that means that you didn't do what you had to do on offense. So now you got to make sure you flip field position. And then next to me is probably extra point or field goal, and then it's kickoff team and kickoff return. Because if you're kicking off, that means you just scored it. You just scored, so you want to make sure you pin them deep and you get good coverage in the kick. I mean, nothing can swing a game like a kickoff return for touchdown or a punt return for touchdown. And being the special teams coordinator, I know in the past when that's happened, like you try to avoid the head coach or whoever's in charge because even if it wasn't your fault, you're getting the blame. You know what I mean? And if you take one back to the house, they're not exactly going to give you a slap on the butt either. They're like, well, that's your job. That's what you're supposed to do. So, I love special teams, man. We try to dedicate 25 to 30 minutes a day. Even if it's just, extra points at the end of practice or whatever, just to make sure the kids realize it's an important part of practice.
Yeah, and I've always felt like some of your younger players that you think are close to kind of sniffing getting reps defensively anyways, for me, some of those kids I was putting on special teams to be a maniac running down the field and trying to cause a turnover, whether it's on spread punt or whether it's on kickoff. And then that starts building confidence and a mentality in them. Man, the coaches have confidence in me. They start playing better at the sub-varsity level, and now they're getting even better. And now all of a sudden you are giving them maybe that 5 to 7 reps a game early on to get their feet wet at varsity. So I think special teams, not only for the importance of it in the game, but also in developing some of your players and their confidence level of getting them on there, especially making a play under the lights and Friday night in front of a crowd. And people are like, oh, that's that sophomore who's in that chemistry class. I know that kid. He's a real nice kid. And here he is now getting these accolades and getting noticed at the varsity level. So I think that stuff's really cool. I'm going to read a quote from you in the paper about offensive scheming. And then I'm going to ask you maybe just to elaborate a little bit more on it. And I have the exact quote here. It says, you have to be able to adapt and adjust to what your personnel does best. I like to be balanced offensively. I don't think that means you have to run the ball 30 times and throw the ball 30 times in a game. One week you maybe have to run 50 times, and then the next week you maybe have to throw 50 times. Talk about your thought process and what you think offensively and what you want your identity to be.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so you hear a lot of coaches talk about being balanced, and for me, I think, and I can't speak for anybody else, but a misconception. I think people think that, okay, well, we have the ball 60 times, we're going to run it 30 times and pass it 30 times. And I'm not saying I'm right, but like that's not necessarily how it works. If you're playing Dighton Rehoboth and they're going to put 8 guys in the box, you better have the ability to throw the ball or you better be able to have 16 play, 17 play drives to score a touchdown. And then in the same sense, if you're playing a team that, they're playing a softer defense, a 3-3 maybe, and things open up, you better have the ability to run the ball. So for me, like when we practice, I want to make sure that we cover all our grounds. I don't ever want to be in a situation in the game where like, oh, we weren't prepared for this. We weren't prepared to throw the ball 30 times. We weren't prepared to run the ball 50 times. So I make sure that in practice we get, it might not be during team time, but we're repping our passing routes or our passing concepts, and we're doing inside run, or we're doing a 7-on-7. So that way, our kids are prepared, and our kids know, every week, some weeks I'll walk to me and be, hey guys, be prepared to sling the rock. And, the quarterback's excited and these kids are ready to go. And they're prepared that, hey, we're probably going to throw it a lot more this week than we did it. And then there's some weeks, there were some games last year we only threw it 2 or 3 times, but that's because we were able to run the ball effectively, So that's kind of my philosophy as far as being balanced. Make sure that whatever it is, you got to make sure you can do both things. And there's been times in the past where I didn't necessarily think that way, and then just situations arise where I'm like, wow, like we really weren't prepared to have to throw the ball that much. We weren't prepared that we were gonna rely on the running game, and that's where I kind of changed my whole mindset of how I wanted to approach, my philosophy and every day in practice.
Yeah, and I think that that's great. Well, what I'm loving, what I hear about you, Coach, and just for the other coaches that are out there listening, it seems like you're just such a complete coach. Like you understand the 3 phases of the game well, and just listening to you talk offensively. So many coaches sometimes try to force their offense in situations and force plays in there that aren't necessarily there. And for you, you got to look at it and say, if this is what's going to be given to me, this is what I'm going to take. And that's what you're talking about, that 30 times running the ball, 30 times passing the ball, or 50 or 50 or whatever it is that you got to look at it. And if you're a coach that's willing to give or take what's given to you, take it. And that's, your game plan. You might have your sheet, you might have your first down plays, your third down plays, and everything, but it all goes out the window if you're just patient and take what's given to you all the time and allow the other team to adjust to you. And sometimes coaches don't do that. So it's great. I love that quote, and I'm glad that's what you meant by it, because you're right. It is just such a balance based off of what you see. Defensively, my side of the ball, I love, and I don't have an exact quote here, but in the paper you had mentioned, one week it might be a 53 to a 4-3 to a 52, and adjusting your defense week to week. Talk about that mentality wise, because I know so many coaches like myself who used to be married to the idea of this is your identity and this is who you are and you're going to adjust to what you see. And as I got better as a coach, and again, more clinics, more education, I realized is that you do have to mold. You do have to be able to do different things and not just be married to a front of what you are and that's it. Talk about that a little bit and how you balance yourself on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, so last year going into last season, the previous year we were in a 3-5, and we wanted the year we were going to be a 4-4. Our base was going to be a 4-4, and we had some success doing that. But then, as there's limitations in every defense, right? Some defenses are better against the run, better against the pass. And as the year went on, I think we ran some 4-4, we ran some 5-3, we ran some 3-5, we ran some 5-2. And, we kept it simple, though. We didn't, I think on defensive side, like for me personally, I don't want to complicate things too much. I want the kids to be able to run and play. I don't want them thinking out there. Thinking's for offense, I always say. Defense, you want kids out there who know their responsibility and then just react and play aggressively. And, depending on what the game plan was, some weeks we were lined up in a 5-2 and we just manned up across the board against some spread teams. We said, hey, like we trust our athletes. We think we can still get after the quarterback with these front 5, and we think we have linebackers who can drop into coverage so they can come. And some weeks we just sat in a regular base 4-4. So I think it's good. It's not for everybody. There's some guys, like you said, who, hey, they run 4-3 and 4-3 cover 2, and that's what they're going to be in no matter what you do. And that's great. And but for me, I think you got to put your athletes or your players in the best situation. Sometimes we've had some kids who are great against the run, but they can't drop into pass coverage. So this week, last year we had a kid who was a senior linebacker and he started every week. And then our first round playoff game, I had a tough conversation like, hey, you're out this week. This is what we're doing, and really what we want. You don't really fit into the game plan. And the kid, he wasn't happy about it, but credit to him, like, coach, whatever's going to help the team win. And the very next week he was back in the starting lineup and he started against Ashland. And he had 2 really good games against Norwell and Ashland. He finished strong, So to me, it's just about doing, right? When you're breaking down tape, you're trying to take away the opponent's strength, right? You're trying to say, well, this is what they do well, so how are we can combat that? And then you're also, for me personally, we're trying to exploit their weaknesses. So if that means I got to get out of my comfort zone of a 4-4 or 4-3 or whatever I'm running, because this is going to give us a better situation to win, well, that's what we're going to do, And I think it's important that all my coaches feel the same way too. It's kind of, it's a conversation. Obviously, there's some guys who they'd rather be in this or that, but once you kind of show them like, hey, well, this is what we're trying to prevent, and this is what's going to help it, I think everybody's on board. Yeah, this is what we're going to do. And everybody buys in. And when, you know how it is, if everybody buys in, you get a great chance of having success, opposed to if some guys, I don't know, is this what we want to do this week? Do you really think this is going to work? Because if you start second guessing yourself, first of all, the kids can see that. I think they see like, hey, like coach isn't really sure. And second of all, like if you can't second guess yourself and have success, you got to be like, hey, this is what we're doing, guys. And we're all in on this and we got to make it work. And if you kind of give them no way out, it's just, this is what it's going to be, boys. We're going to sink or we're going to swim, So that's kind of how we approach it. I'm not saying it's the right fit. It's not for everybody. That's how we're doing it at Old Rochester.
Yeah, and I think for an offensive coordinator, that's tough too. I mean, you don't know what they're going to throw at you, right? So if you're adjusting yourself, from a 4-3 to a 52 to a 3-5-3 or whatever that it is, that's a lot of adjustment for them as well because they're practicing something weekly and they'd be like, oh, they might come out in this and they might come out in that, and let's prepare for this. That's a lot of preparation, a lot of time that they got to use in practice to prepare for the adjustments you make defensively. So as difficult as it might be from your end or just getting the kids on the same page and understanding for themselves, for offensive coordinators on the other side, it's kind of a nightmare too, because you're choosing three things. You're going to find one that works, and then they got to be able to combat that. So it becomes that chess game back and forth a little bit. So it's great, coach. And like I said to you before, you understand the complete phases of the game, and I think that's so important. Personnel-wise, like you said, I've been in that situation myself of not playing a captain corner on defense because we faced a double tight double wing, and I wanted another linebacker out there on the outside because they didn't throw the ball a lot. So, I understand that difficulty. But talk about personnel. I mean, you obviously have your starting guys on each side of the ball. How much substituting are you guys doing in and off the field between linemen or linebackers or defensive backs? And I know some of that might be personnel based, but, do you try to get a pretty good rotation in there on either side of the ball, specifically maybe more defensively than anything?
Yeah, I mean, we do. We really try to, we had a lot of success here. We went to a Super Bowl because we had a lot of kids that only played one way. I think we had 2 or 3 kids maybe who played offense and defense, but they weren't, it was a fullback who would rotate into other guys. So I think from my experience that year, we had a lot of success. We were in tight games at halftime, but then the second half we would pull away. And I think they had to do with the guys were only going one way. So where the other teams, that guys played 60 snaps. On our side, we only had a guy who played 30 snaps. So he's much fresher going into that game. Last year we didn't have the ability to have that so much. We probably had like 8 or 9 guys who started both ways, but we had a lot of linemen. So defensively, we tried to get as many fresh guys in there as possible. And that's the goal this year too, especially with COVID and everything going on, that once we get to playing ball, we're going to try to make substitutes as much as possible and get, as long as those guys are ready and prepared to play. As far as switching to different defenses, we did try to do our best to make sure, okay, the personnel we have in the field, that gives you the ability to be in the 4-4 right now, the 5-3, or the 3-5. And sometimes it included like a DN type kid, maybe bumping back to outside linebacker, that type of thing. But we felt comfortable because we did it so much that we were able to make it work. I mean, I remember we played Nauset last year, and they had a kid, phenomenal athlete, great quarterback, even better kid, Bobby Joy, probably the best athlete on the Cape, to be honest with you. And he was their quarterback, and like he could run the ball, and he was like, I held my breath when he ran, and he could sling the ball too. And like we basically that's when we went 4-4, 5-3, and 3-5 whenever they went, but it was all dictated. If they had their, tight end wing look, we were going to be in that 5-3. Well, if they were 2x2, we were going to be that 3-5. And we were lucky. We had a kid, Dylan DeWolf. He was a senior captain. He's at Framingham State now. He was a great linebacker. And he just do a good job recognizing check, and he would check into whatever we were going into. So we did a good job again. Bobby Joy still got his. I mean, we took a lead right before half, and then he took it. Hey, don't kick it to Bobby Joy, and we kicked it to him, and he took it 101 yards to the house. And it's like, well, what are we doing here? We said, don't kick the ball.
Were you just looking at your special teams coordinator like, what?
No, because, it's
you know how it feels.
Yeah, I know exactly how it goes. And our kicker, he's our quarterback, and he does a great job. And he's like, Coach, I tried to – and he did. He tried to kick it like 10 yards the other way, and he just came sweeping through, caught it, and the next thing you know, he's like in the end zone. I'm like, what are you going to do,
Oh.
But, yeah, so, we try to do our best with personnel, get guys in and out of the game, but also trying to make sure that, all right, if we want to do this week, if we want to be in a 5-3 or a 3-5, let's make sure whoever's on the field that we can adjust, and make sure we can line up properly, because alignment and assignment, that's basically defensive football. If you're not lined up right and you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to have much success. So we try to really make sure we drill it in on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And we do a lot of walkthroughs, especially defensively, just to walk through, letting the kids recognize the different sets they've seen, or maybe if 2 years ago we saw them run this, just so that way the kids recognize it. Because a lot of times I feel like on the high school level, it's easy to get kids get confused and they think they see something that's not true. So we really want to make sure that they have a basic understanding of this is what you're probably going to see. And when they're in this is where we want to be. And we have 3 timeouts a half, and I don't care if we burn all 3 in the first quarter. I don't want to be out of position, So, and that helps when you have a kid like we had last year at inside linebacker, because he was a film guy and he understood it. And, it's about having confidence in your players too, trusting that they know what you're trying to get done on game day.
Yeah, and I think that's great. You mentioned, calling a timeout, we'll blow them all in the first quarter if we have to. I mean, now there's only 3 timeouts with the change in rules over the last year. But you're right, because I've lost games that you look back on a play and we were lined up incorrectly, or kids were chatting on the field and you were like, man, I should call a timeout. And then they run the play and they take it to the house and you're just like, oh my God. And then we look back at the game. It's what really cost you when you look at the momentum, obviously the score, the points, everything, right? So yeah, defensively, it's vital that you cannot be out of position, because it takes one play for them to be running at that spot that you're out of position, and then you're in trouble. You mentioned COVID earlier. Talk about coaching through this. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around it. I mean, it's crazy just going to the grocery store, let alone running a football program and keeping your kids as safe as possible. So, talk a little bit about how you've been navigating through this.
Well, it's been crazy, right? Because, and I'm sure every coach kind of has the same story. One day you're in the weight room, and next thing you know, you're like, hey, they're shutting down school for 2 weeks. And not in my wildest imagination would we be in January, and this is still going on. I literally thought in my head, and I'm not the smartest guy going, I'll be the first to say that, but I literally thought okay, this is middle of March. We'll be back in the weight room, spring break, and then we'll go through our whole thing. We'll be behind, but so will everybody else. And then as it kept going, it's well, this isn't going anywhere, And I thought, early on, I was like, oh, we'll play football. And then about the middle of summer, I realized football's not happening this year, at least not in the fall. And we've done some Zoom. We've done some Zoom meetings. We have a lot of kids who are still working out, and they're working out, at the gyms. But we haven't, as far as a team, we haven't been in the weight room as a team. We did a summer conditioning program for all athletes at Old Rochester. We did that for about 6 weeks. We did a fall conditioning, because in our league, the SCC, there was no soccer or field hockey. They didn't play any sports. So we did a fall conditioning. And we've been fortunate. We were able to rent an indoor facility at 4 Kicks in Taunton. We've been about once a week for about the last 5 or 6 weeks. We've been able to get the football kids up there, no equipment, just street clothes, but, get them conditioning, doing some circuits, teaching some fundamentals, a little install offensive defense. With the new MIAA rules being lifted, it allows us to kind of, and more than anything, it's just great to be around the kids. It's great to be around the coaches, be around the kids, because, they talk about mental health and everything, but I know for me, it was tough this August and September. You're so used to I should be at double sessions right now. We should be getting ready for our first scrimmage. Last year, this day, we played Dartmouth High School, and now that's gone. I mean, it's kind of well, what's going on here? And, so it's been tough. We got a great group of kids. The kids work hard. They do their own thing on the side, whether it's clinics or 7-on-7 leagues. And then we've been seeing most of them for about 1 day a week. We've been meeting every Sunday since the middle of October as a coaching staff on Sunday nights, for an hour. Sometimes it's 15 minutes football and 45 minutes just catching up with the boys, you know what I mean? But sometimes it's an hour and 30 minutes talking football or whatever it is. So it's just good. For that 1 or 2 days a week between meeting the coaches and seeing the kids, it feels like, there's no COVID going on. It feels like there's none of this other things, like craziness going on in our world. It's just, you think it's regular times, old times, So that's been the best thing for me, my mental health. And I think for a lot of my coaches too, guys like my father and Coach Sherman, Coach DeRose, that's all they've known for the last 40 years is football season and being around the kids. And right now we'd already be in our weightlifting off-season program. So to have that, 1 hour on Sundays and 1 hour on Mondays to be around the kids and the coaches, I think it's been great for me. It's been great for the coaches and even the kids. As much as at times I'm sure they're happy not to see me, I think with everything that's going on, they're just happy to be out of the house and doing something, and they feel they're working towards something that's going to happen in the winter. So
Yeah, and it's been crazy. I mean, every coach that I've had on here, just listening to every school so different too about what they're allowing and what they're not allowing and what the numbers are in every city and town. So that's great that you guys are able to get like an indoor facility to at least get inside. Like you said, if nothing else, just conditioning, that team bonding, terminology, language, things that you want to make sure that you're getting across to them as much as you can. How much film you guys doing? You doing a lot of film with them, or are you just kind of more just about the on the field stuff?
right now, we're not doing any film with the kids, to be honest with you. As a
Yeah.
coaching staff, we watch some film together. We do a lot of, I mean, with things going on, and we do a lot of stuff like, hey guys, this week let's watch, Aponequid's game tape. We played Aponequid 3 times last year, so hey, let's watch Aponequid. Then we'll compare. Like, hey, this is what we saw. But as far as like meeting as a staff and watching film together, or the kids watch, like it's just a no go right now. With everything going on, like it's not something that we've been able to do. I mean, we'd love to do it, and I know a lot of the kids on their own. Hey, coach, I watch film, but you know how that goes sometimes. It's watching film that them might be watching that highlight tape
Just watching
20
them.
times in a row. Yeah, you know. Which if I had a highlight tape like some of these kids, I'd probably watch it too. But
Yeah. You mentioned your conference, right? The SCC, right? And you guys, obviously, the last 4 or 5 years, I mentioned earlier, what 34-6 over a 4-year window. Talk about the types of teams that are in your conference, some of these tough teams that you guys play, because regardless of whether you've won the league over a long period of time or you're successful in that league really gets you ready for the big run. It gets you ready for the playoffs. It gets you ready for an extended playoff run, and even that's visit to Gillette Stadium.
yep. I think last year, so the SCC is a large and a small, and we're in the large. And I think last year, every team in the large made the playoffs. So ourselves, Aponequid, Dayton Rehoboth, Somerset, New Bedford Tech, we all made the playoffs. So, I mean, it's a competitive league every year. It's a grind. I never feel like, even though we went to the Super Bowl, I mean, there were a lot of tight games within that league. There's never like, hey, so and so's here and everybody else down here. It's always like everybody's hovering. I think last year when we played DR, I think they were 0-3, and I mean we beat them they won for 2 at the end of the game. We just barely squeaked by and won that game, and then they ended up turning around after that and they ended up making the playoffs. So it's a really tough league. We see different things. We see some double wing, we see some wing tee, we see some spread things. So it's really like a grab bag. We're running the option. So like everybody has their own niche, and you're preparing for what works against Somerset Berkeley might not work against New Bedford Tech. So it makes it fun though too, because you're not seeing the same thing every week. But it can be challenging because as a lot of different offenses, there's a lot of different rules for your defense. So understanding the rules and what they're going to see, and you see a run team like Somerset who's going to try to run it every play, and they see New Bedford Tech who's going 4 or 5 wide and is spreading the ball around. It can be tough for the kids to switch from, hey, like we're in there, we're just plugging holes this week. Hey guys, get back. Make sure you don't get beat. You know what I mean? Like rotating coverages and everything else. So it is fun. A lot of good coaches in our league, all good guys. Obviously it's competitive. You want to beat those guys, but there are a lot. It's a great league to be a part of. I'm proud to be a part of that league, and you can go out and have a good time with those guys when it's in the off season, and but then on game day, you're trying to beat each other.
Yeah, and that's great. It's nice to have a league. I mean, I was in the CCL for a long time, and it was nice really having relationships with all the coaches there and great guys off the field. But on the field, yeah, you're competing against each other, you're scouting each other, and you're trying to best each other. And again, that probably explains. You listen to all those different offenses. This is why you're in a 4-3, a 5-3, a 3-5, because when you're seeing those offenses, especially like a wing team, a double tight double wing, I mean, guards are everything. They take you to plays, they pull all the time. So it's different in spread. They're not doing that as much. So like you said, there are different keys and different responsibilities that you got to teach in those offenses, or they will run the ball down your throat consistently for 5 or 6 yards, eat time on the clock, and eat time of possession, and take your offense off the field. So yeah, there's a lot to prepare for when you see those types of offenses. Talk about your advice to young coaches, because you listen, you've been there and done it. I mean, you were a head coach. This is now your second stint. You were an assistant coach for a very successful hockey program. You went to the Garden. You went to Gillette Stadium. I mean, that might be a trivia question down the line for me as the show gets bigger and bigger. Is what guest did I have on that coached a game both? I'm going to write that down. That's a little trivia question I'll have for my fans. But talk about your advice to young coaches. I mean, you're successful as an assistant. You've been successful as a high school head coach. I mean, talk about what you would tell these guys what to do. Hey, listen, man, this is what I got for you. Hey, this is what, and it doesn't mean it's just football. It could be any sport.
Yeah. I think that first off, like every job you do, whether it sucks or it's a lot of fun. Like I said earlier, like own it. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing worse than like on a game day when you're in the office of the coaches and I'm trying to do last minute prep on like a call sheet or whatever, and I get a kid asking me for a mouthpiece, and I look around and everybody's just on their phone or just looking at the kid, and then I have to get up. And fortunately, that doesn't happen at Old Rochester. But I think take care of all the little things. Make sure that whatever the head coach is asking of you, you make sure you do it, because the more you do and the coach has trust in you and has faith in you, like the more responsibility you're going to get. You're not going to start off and go from you're coaching the freshman team today and then a week from now you're calling the offense. You got to slowly build that trust and show that you can handle it and show that like you understand things, and be humble about it. Like I'm still, like I said earlier, like I don't know everything. I'm always trying to learn. I was on the phone today with Ross from Barnesville, the head coach, and he's talking to me about things, and I'm like, man, I'm driving right now. Like you need to text me this because I feel like so like there's always something you can learn, something you can know, and like if it was a guy on my staff, I mean, I got these guys, Coach Sherman, my father, Coach DeRoja, they've seen a lot of football. They've seen more football than I've seen. So you can learn a lot, not just from the head coach, from assistant coaches. And, there's times that you might be a skill guy, but you got to learn how to coach offensive line, because that's where I need you this year. And, just go all in and learn everything you can, and try to be balanced. Try to know a little bit about defense. Don't just say, like, I'm an offensive guy. Like, I hear that a lot from some young guys, like, well, I'm an offensive guy. Well, in high school, we coach both ways, man. Like, it's not called, we don't have offensive guys and defensive guys. You got offensive guys, defensive guys, and special teams, and it's all one here. So you better be able to earn your keep on both sides of the ball. You know what I mean? So that would be my advice. Just learn as much as you can. Listen. Little things you might think, like our line coach, Coach Sherm, like the linemen you watch, they do this ritual every day. It's like 15 minutes. And if you're an outside looking at you, like, what is this doing? Like, these guys just look like they're just shooting their hands and they're taking steps, but it's important because he's teaching flat back and everything else. And that the offense we run, like, that's what he needs, So, like, there's always little things, little nuances you can learn and pay attention. You can learn a lot of drills, just even on Twitter. Sometimes I see, like, a drill that these Alabama linebackers are using. I'm like, rolling tennis balls. Okay, yeah, we can do that. They can do that. We certainly, Old Rochester, can do it, So always try to learn, try to get as much knowledge you can. The internet's a great resource. That's something that 20 years ago coaches didn't have.
Right.
More than plenty of high school coaches and college coaches, you shoot them an email or text, hey, love to sit down. They always want to get guys at their facility, because at some point they might need a kid from Old Rochester High School. So if you say, hey, I'm a young coach, offensive line coach, I don't really know much. Can I come up? They love to have you up there. So, that would be my advice. Just if you're serious about it, and and I was serious about it, and I know you were serious about it. If anybody who's serious about it, they want to continue to learn and grow. And if you're a young coach, like, there's plenty of opportunities out there. And it might mean that you don't get paid right away, but in the long, sometimes you got to take that first step and volunteer for a year or two, because something will open up. It might not be where you're at, but somebody will eventually. A head coach will say, hey, I know you got a spot. I got this guy. He's been volunteering for you. He's a good young coach. Like, he'd be great for your program. And that's how it works. Guys are always looking. I get calls from guys, hey, that this kid played for you. What do you think about him? Oh, yeah, he was a great kid. He worked hard to be a great coach. That's how it goes a long way, So I think if you're serious about it, it's something you want to do, you just go all in, man. You don't just stick your toe in the pool. You just jump in and start doing the backstroke.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, I even was looking for coaches at some point. A prerequisite sometimes was just knowing technology. I mean, this coach is young. We can teach them a lot of things, but technologically they're savvy and they really know what they're doing. Great. Have them on staff. They're a huge utilization. So I think there's just so much of a range for young coaches out there that they bring so much to the table. And like you said, when head coaches give you more responsibility at the time, you might hate it because you're like, why am I doing everybody else's job? But it's because they trust you to do that and they want you to grow and they see the potential in you. And that's the way you got to look at it. Even though in the moment it might be like, oh, I'm adding another huge thing I got to do on my plate for this, but it's worth it because you're also educating yourself and you're learning how to manage that load. And as we talked about, when you interview for these jobs and you first become a head coach, there is a wow factor of being a little overwhelmed and having a little bit more responsibility, and maybe not so much on the X's and O's aspect of it, but off the field, dealing with parents, dealing with kids, maybe grades or issues in the classroom, or something's going on in someone's family. So there's a lot more that you have to be worried about, and those assistant coaches you got to be able to trust. So that's great advice, Coach. And what's cool, I asked all my guests this question, and you're the first coach again that I've had on here that got to coach with his dad for so long. So I talk about sacrifice. I talk about, being around sports. There's a lot of sacrifice you make off the field as far as relationships go and friendships go, and spending, time. And when on a Friday or Saturday night, your friends are going away or doing something fun, and you're in Ashland scouting a game, because you got a game against them the next week and you got to see this team play live. So you sacrifice a lot of time. In hockey, I'm sure you did the same exact thing. So talk about the sacrifice that's gone into your coaching career a little bit, and maybe the other things that you've kind of had to maybe put on the back burner a little bit during it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be successful coach, whether you're coaching, you're the head coach of a football team in Old Rochester, you're coaching, JV soccer or whatever it is, like it definitely eats into your personal time, right? But I also think that, like, for me, basically, and it's tough. Like, I got buddies, we're in fantasy football leagues, and it's like I'm in a fantasy football league, but I have to have a co-owner because I don't even have time. Like, I can't tell you. It's awful because I used to love watching. Like, I don't have time to even watch football half the time. You know what I mean? Because you're game planning, you do whatever. So, like, but I love it. So from August till November, I have no problem with, because to me, like, my going out, my one night a week, that's a Friday night after the games with the other coaches. Like, so you definitely sacrifice a lot of your social life. I've definitely lost relationships over a coach. I'm not a married guy. I have a girlfriend right now, but I don't have any kids. So I got 2 dogs. I have my girlfriend, and she's very supportive of everything. And she's like, she knows I'm passionate about it, and that's what I love to do. So she's like, go ahead. And she doesn't know the game, but she's learning to know the game and understands, different things. And she understands that I'm like, hey, like, I got to make this phone call. And it's an hour and a half later, I'm pacing my backyard, like, talking about, outside veer. You know what I mean? Like, so you definitely make sacrifices. Not everybody gets it. I'm sure to a lot of people, you just coach in high school football, like, but I think if you talk to any coach who really cares, like, you spend a lot of time, man, and I'm not just saying head coaches, assistant coaches, a lot of time watching tape, right? Especially once you get into, that playoff drive. Okay, you went through your 7 weeks of regular season, now it's the playoffs. I mean, you watch so much tape to a point where it's almost like you're not benefiting from it because you got your head full with so much knowledge, but it's great. I mean, I love it. And the crazy thing about football, it's a year-round job. I mean, you may get your paycheck for, August through November, but as soon as football ends, like at Old Rochester, we take off December because we let the kids, they're playing winter sports or whatever. And then we start back up in January, and we go January through August, and then we start football. So it's a year-round commitment. And my assistants, they commit a year-round. It's not like I'm the only guy showing up to weightlifting. They all show up too. We take turns, what guys can be there, what nights. And, it's definitely a sacrifice, but I love it, and I wouldn't change it any other way. Until maybe, I'm sure I'll feel different. People say, hey, wait till you have your first kid. Maybe it'll be different then. But right now, these I got 75 kids. You know what I mean? I'm looking after all of them. You know what I mean? And even when I want to get away from them, I can't sometimes. So it's good, man. I love it, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah. So my last question I was going to ask you, you kind of answered. So how much time do you take away from football? Maybe let's not count the weight room, but I mean, like, the film watching, the spring practices that you might be going to visit colleges. How much time do you take away once football season ends? You're kind of like, okay, I'm going to take this amount of time away to recharge the batteries a little bit.
Usually, so it's weird. When I was coaching hockey still, it was easy because I went from football season that day, Monday after Thanksgiving, you jump right into hockey. So you're away from football, but you're still coaching. So I haven't done that in 2 years now, and it's been nice. I usually take the month of December, and I'll watch Thanksgiving. We'll play, and I'll upload Huddle that night usually. And I end up watching it a couple times because that week, like usually right after Thanksgiving, you get the helmets and shoulder pads out to be reconditioned. So that weekend you might watch it, but then I'll literally try to take the whole month of December and just say, like, nothing football. We have an award down here called the Otto Graham Award. It's like the top high school player in the South Coast of Massachusetts. So that's in December. So besides that, I'll basically the whole month of December, I'll try. I mean, you end up thinking you can't help. You're watching the Patriots or whatever. You're thinking about that, like, oh, you see a bowl game, you scribble something down, like, oh, let me keep that in mind. But try to take at least a full month of December off. And then usually, like last year in January, we'll have our first coaches meeting in January, and we'll start talking about weight room. Hey, what clinics do we want to go to? Do we want to try to go visit a college this year? What are we going to do? So January it starts ramping back up. I mean, it's still, we meet like once a month, every month, but then I feel like once we get to like May, everything with 7-on-7s, everything going on, it starts ramping up. And usually we're meeting twice a month. And then come July, August, it's almost like once a week as a coach's staff. We'll start meeting, the kids weight lift, let's say 4:30 to 6:30. We'll get there. We'll meet either before they start or after they start. And, so really you get a month off, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot.
It is
it's a little good time. It's a long time to just kind of clear your mind and to reflect a little bit on the season. Because for me, I was, especially this past year after, losing to Ashland, and we played our Thanksgiving Day game, I was like mentally exhausted. Like I won a couple of weeks, but like I was just so happy to like go home after work and just relax and chill out on the couch and not really think too much about football. And but now, with everything that happened with COVID, you kind of wish that you didn't take that time off. You're like, man, because I it's like anything else. You take for granted things sometimes, and I think this year for certain, I think a lot of things that people take it for granted, now you realize like how special they are. So I can't wait to get back out there and be coaching every day. And maybe this year, I mean, if we play like we're supposed to, I mean, we're going to end in May. We'll start back up in August. So there won't be any downtime. But I think myself and I think a lot of coaches around the state would be excited for that.
Yeah, it's awesome. And, I want to thank you for coming on here because honestly, listening to you, it's like coaches like you, why I started this podcast, because coaching is such a commitment, and the things that you put into it in season, out of season, on your free time, going to clinics, going to spring practices, being there for your kids. And we didn't even talk about the whole recruiting aspect of players that are going to college. You mentioned Framingham State. Their head football coach is going to be a guest on here March 1st. So, there's a lot that you do for your kids when the sport ends. And that next step of where they're going to college, putting a recruiting tape together, sitting down with them maybe for interviews, and then obviously your weightlifting. You guys are starting back up in January. It's why I started this podcast. Coaches work so hard. It's not about the paycheck to them. Any coach who tells you about his paycheck, they're coaching D1 level somewhere and making some pretty good money. That might be a little different jumping from job to job, but at the high school level, it's about the grind. It's about building the program, and it's about being a good, role model for your players and running the program the right way. And that's what makes high school sports so amazing. And that's why it's been a big part of my life. And I've been loving the stories that I've been telling. It's coaches like you that really just dedicate yourselves to it. So, thank you to all the parents out there and all the players that you've coached and you affected in a positive way. Thank you, because there's a bunch of people talking about you out there, even when you don't even realize it, in such a positive light. And like I said, so many people reach back out to me when I announced you as a guest on the show about how great you were and how great your program is. So it was really nice to see that like outpour of support for you before you even came on the show.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be on here. I've been watching your podcast. I told you I've been watching your podcast. You've had some great coaches on here, man, and I think you do a great job, man. I told you the other day, like, you might have found your niche, man. This might be the big thing for you. So
yeah, things happen for a reason, it's crazy.
I know you want to get back into coaching, but you might have found your niche here, man. And it's an honor to be on this show, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about the program. And hopefully we have a good season, and you can follow us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I plan on it. I plan on staying in touch, following you, and having you back on at some point. I love to hear the experience of coaching during COVID. And I see hockey teams changing in their cars and kids walking into the ring with everything but their skates on. So I can only imagine what a football locker room and kids getting ready and what that's going to look like. But before we go, we have our 2-minute drill that we run here at the end of every show. So you've watched the show, so you've probably seen a few of these, but I'm just going to fire some rapid fire questions at you. You got, 2 minutes, as many as we can get in. I do get a challenge. If I want you to explain something a little bit more, I'm intrigued by the answer, and vice versa. If you want to be able to explain something, I'll give you that opportunity too. So let me set my timer here, and away we go. What's the best play in your playbook right now?
Outside veer.
Okay. So big special teams guy. Who's the best special teams player you've ever coached at the high school level? And I'll let you explain.
Yeah, we had this kid Cole Bernier when I was at O'Colony. He was our quarterback. He was a gunner on the punt team. He was on the kickout. He played everything, man. And he, as a sophomore and a junior, he led our team in special team tackles. And then he was a senior. He's our quarterback. And he's like, Coach, I got to be on there. So I was like, hey, get out there.
Yeah,
man.
Putting your quarterback is scary, man.
Yeah, it is. But he played outside linebacker for us too. But he was a tough kid, man. He could have played anywhere. He played at O'Colony little D8 school, but he could have played anywhere, man. He's as tough as nails, and he's a good kid too, and competed his ass off.
Awesome. Awesome. Hardest working coach that you've ever coached with, either as an assistant or a head coach, someone that you were like, wow, this guy, besides your dad, I'm sure your dad's number one, but outside of your father.
Oh man, that's tough because I've had a lot of good guys I've coached with. I'm gonna say Coach Craig Sherman. I mean, the guy's 70-something years old, and this guy lives, breathes football. I mean, I was talking to him today. He's talking to me about he's an O-line guy. He's my defensive coordinator. He just loves it, and he loves the game. And he's retired, but he still works. He's still banging nails on the side, trying to make some money. And all he talks about is football every day. Football. He's always, sometimes I get a text message like 5:30 in the morning. He's an older guy, so he wakes up early at 5:30 in the morning, and there'll be like 6 texts in a row, just long things. And he's always talking. He's always down to talk football. So I'd have to go with him. And he's a Hall of Fame Massachusetts high school football coach. So
there you go. Yeah, you got a great staff around you, man.
I do. I'm lucky,
it's
man.
Awesome. It's awesome. Okay, Ohio State, Alabama.
Alabama, man, roll tide.
Okay. In 2021, the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots is who?
It's tough, man. That's a good question. I don't get paid enough money to come up with that answer, man. Nothing that's on their roster right now. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think you're going to see Jimmy G come back to town, or what I'm kind of secretly hoping is Justin Fields somehow falls and the Patriots somehow move up a little bit. I think there's your Kyle Murray, there's your Russell Wilson, all in one.
I would love to see. I just don't feel like they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
I just don't. Like everybody thinks they will, so I feel like when everyone else is zigging, they're zagging, man. It's
they're drafting some linemen.
yeah, it'll be an offensive lineman or a defensive tackle, and nobody would be happy, but the guy would probably be an all-pro. It's hard to, I know people are down on Belichick after this year, but how do you argue with what he's done, man? It's like you're allowed a hiccup in 20-something years,
Yeah, it doesn't even bother me. It doesn't bother me.
Honestly, as a fan, and I'm a huge, my players are spoiled, and all these 18-year-old kids are spoiled. When I was a kid, my grandfather had season tickets to the Patriots. They would win like 1 or 2 games. It was like empty old Sullivan Stadium. Like, they don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the old metal seats. Like we're so lucky. So we have I'm excited to see what are we going to do in the draft? How are we going to attack free? I'm excited about it.
It's cool. And you learn a lot as a coach. We've learned a lot as a coach from their staff and how to run your program and the mentality. I mean, yeah, Bill Belichick there'll be never a bad word I say about what he's done for sure. All right, we'll start the clock back up. I got a few more questions. 4th and goal from the 3. What are you running?
So that was the situation in Ashland last year. We ran a QB follow and it didn't work out. So I don't know, man. if I could go back, I would have ran outside veer on that play. That's kind of like my go-to when we need something. I should have stuck with it, but I didn't hold my gun. So I'm gonna say outside veer, man. It answers all questions.
I just opened up a wound. I apologize for that.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Sideline behavior coach. How are you on the sideline?
Oh, I'm good, man. I'm calm. I don't get too excited. I don't get too mad. I'm pretty laid back out there. I'm usually the one telling my assistant coaches, back up, guys, back up. I got a couple coaches that like to creep on the field and, get those 15-yard penalties. I think I got one this past year, but it was unwarranted. I told the guy, like, come on, man. That's all I gave him, the old come on, man. And he tossed a flag on me.
Ref trying the game control early. I get it.
Yeah. So I wasn't excited about that one. But for the most part, I think I'm pretty – now, when I was younger, I was out of control. I'd be the first to tell you. Like, I remember leaving a game, and on the bus ride home, I was like, man, like, you got to calm down. Like, telling myself, you got to calm down, man. Like, you're out of control out there.
Yeah.
And after that experience, I think I got a 15-yard penalty. And I was – after that, I was like, man, I got to really – buckle down. I'm the head coach now. I got to set the example. So
it's much different.
To be in control. But when you're an assistant coach, you can be a little bit more out of control. It's acceptable. You know what I mean? Like, you can be more one of the guys. When you're the head coach, you got to try to be more in line and in order,
Yeah. I had some great young guys. They knew. I think for anything, they were my get back guys a little bit of time. So I get it. Last one, you've coached at a lot of different places, but who's the best player you think you've ever seen come through either Old Colony or Old Rochester? Someone who really stands out to you.
That's another tough question, man.
I know. That's what I'm here for. All the tough questions.
We had, it's different. We had a kid, Harry Smith. He's at Southern Connecticut. and he was a fullback for us, an outside linebacker, and he was a man amongst boys. I mean, he's like, I don't know, 6'2", 240 when he was in high school. He ran like a 4.6 40. He's even bigger now. He's enormous now. He was a great player. This past year, we had two kids, Dylan DeWolf. He was an inside linebacker and a fullback. Cam Brzezinski, a D end and a fullback. And I don't know, those kids, I'd put those three kids up against anybody. I mean, those kids, what made them great is those kids were full go. You couldn't tell if it was a Tuesday practice or it was a Friday night game. You know, those kids only knew one speed, and they made everybody else around them better. You know, and right now, those are the kids I'd want to go to war with if I had to tomorrow.
That's awesome. That's great. Great answer. Coach, you've survived the 2-minute drill. As I said to you before, I'm really honored to have you on here. I was really excited for this one because, like I said, the outpour of support and positive energy that people gave to you, to me, you know, DMing me. I mean, I had people texting me. I didn't know who they were. So that just shows kind of the effect that you've had. It was great. And I was really excited for this episode, and it was amazing. I learned so much. My notebook just filled up a little bit more with some things, some news, some things when I get back into it, that are going to help me out. And it's coaches like you that make it really easy to love this sport for sure. So from Beyond Podcast, I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, Bryce Guilbeault, head football coach at Old Rochester High School. We appreciate you coming on, Coach. And till next time.
Anthony, I have one question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, spicy chicken sandwich. Who has the best spicy chicken sandwich?
Oh, man.
That's a tough question. I'm here for the hard-hitting questions, man.
I mean, I'm a big McDonald's guy, you know, because with the little ones, they love French fries. That's like the big thing in this house now. It's all about the French fries, and they love French fries. So I think any spicy chicken sandwich I get, it's typically from McDonald's just because of proximity and what my kids really like.
All right. I respect it. Hey, fun fact about our guy, Craig Turner over at Wilmington High School.
Okay, let's hear it.
Doesn't like spicy food.
Wow, really?
Crazy, huh?
I should have had that on the 2-minute drill.
Yeah, I wish he had, because I asked him, spicy chicken sandwich, who's got the best? And he said, I don't know. I don't like spicy food. I was shocked.
Wow. Well, that's great. Now it's great to have guests that know guests and can give facts about guests for the next time they come on. This is great. Opening up a whole new window of things. This is awesome. And I appreciate you dealing with this background falling apart halfway through the interview. That was unexpected, but hey, you know, the show goes on.
We're going to get you an Old Rochester T-shirt to put up there in the background.
Heck yeah. I'll wear it, and it'll be up there every episode. That I promise you for sure.
All right, man. Well, thanks for having me. I really had a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on again. Anthony Petrellis, Beyond Podcast. Till next time, guys. Thank you so much.